Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Welcome to All Things Policy. I'm Aishwaria Sonavane, Research Analyst for Pakistan Studies at the Takshashila Institution, and your host for today's episode. A lot has been said about Pakistan's role in the Iran-US negotiations amid the West Asia conflict. And as the region moves closer to a settlement this Friday, I want to take a moment to look at what's happening internally within Pakistan. It seems that Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which has historically been central to Pakistan's geopolitical contestation with India, has begun to feel the consequences of being treated as a peripheral region. In the last week, we saw protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. We saw a strong police response. And to help us unpack all of this, I am joined by Malik Moin Abbas. He's a teaching fellow at Plaksha University and a former fellow of the Network for the Advanced Study of Pakistan Fellowship at Takshashila. Welcome, Moin.
Thank you for having me here, Aishwarya. It's so great to be back here after a long time.
Yeah. To begin with, what exactly triggered these protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? I know you've done a paper where you extensively covered the protests in 2024, and I'll come back to that. But speaking of the protests that happened last week, were they primarily about economic issues like electricity prices and wheat subsidies? Or is there a deeper political grievance underneath this unrest?
So I would say that there are two things here. Firstly, these protests shouldn't be looked at in isolation as the ones which have happened last week. This is the latest iteration of a movement which you can safely say started back in 2023, when this coalition of civil society activists, transporters, traders, students was formed, named as Joint Jammu and Kashmir Awami Action Committee. And since then, there has been a mass protest each year since then. So there was one in 23, a more severe one in 24. Last year, there were two major movements throughout the year. There was one in June and other in December. And this is the latest one among that. So this is just the latest iteration of a movement which started quite a few years ago.
2020, right? And this is the fourth major
Yes.
protest. Yeah. Please go on.
So secondly, how the movement is framed as if it's what this movement is it one aimed at a governance, aimed towards governance, or something else, maybe separatist politics? That depends on who is doing the talking around that issue.
Right.
So if you see many Pakistani commentators, they view it purely as, even if they are like sympathetic towards it, they view it, okay, they are trying to address governance problems, but occasionally these protesters, they cross the threshold of what is allowed and what is not allowed. But if you go and talk to some of the activists themselves, they have a completely different view of what it is, and that's what my previous research was, and what I see happening from now.
Okay. For those of our, I think before we get into understanding what protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir are like, especially for our viewers who don't know this, could you help us firstly understand the political structure in the territory? Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is a semi-autonomous region. It has its own flag. It has its own president. So how does that work?
Yes, so that's a funny arrangement which has its roots in the partition. When the formerly princely state of Jammu and Kashmir was sort of divided, not formally divided, but as a result, de facto divided between India and Pakistan, this small chunk of the previously larger state there were a few rebellions in it in the Poonch area, and then the tribals had invaded from the Muzaffarabad region. So it was just the ceasefire which happened in January 1949. The lines were settled there, the ceasefire line, and that this portion of it, excluding Gilgit-Baltistan, came to be known as Azad Kashmir. But this region is not like, it's not an ethno-linguistically, you could call it Kashmiri in that sense, since it was based in this larger state called Jammu and Kashmir, and more famously Kashmir, because that was the most famous element of it. But it has more or less nothing to do with Kashmir Valley and Kashmiris as an ethno-lingual group as such. The main ethnic Kashmiris consist of less than 5% of territory's 4 million residents, and most of it is inhabited by Pahadis and Gujars, the same people who inhabit the western districts of the Indian division of Jammu. It's the same composition of people, but they call themselves Kashmiris from the first day, at least elite used to do, and now this identity has been taken up by the people at grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
So the political structure which sort of follows it, it's not technically, it's not part of Pakistan. So that's the funny arrangement, because according to them, the Kashmir question, according to them, wasn't settled. So this portion had to be given some structure to run it, but they had to make sure that it wasn't annexed. And every government, at least on paper, tried to make sure that Azad Jammu and Kashmir, or at least these three divisions of Muzaffarabad, Mirpur, and Punch, are not formally called as territories of Pakistan. So what they created was this. They tried various arrangements. There was a presidential order during Yahya Khan's years. Then what now exists there is the arrangement created under the 1974 interim Azad Kashmir Constitution Act. So that is the legal framework which sort of Pakistan used to create some sort of a political and administrative structure there, trying to give it a shape without formally annexing it. And that has been the question that has that has been hovering around the ruling elites of Pakistan and the people of Azad Kashmir ever since. Okay, what is this case exactly? Because they want a more settled arrangement,
Mm-hmm.
increasingly so, but the establishment doesn't. Because according to them, it's still, this territory is still a part of a question which remains unanswered, and it can't be settled till, according to them, the whole thing is settled. So that's the limbo in which the place has been in. Gilgit-Baltistan, of course, was is right now effectively a different region altogether. It has been given some level of self-governance under the 2010 constitution arrangement. AJK had an arrangement before that, but both these territories aren't part of Pakistan proper, unlike the territories on this side of the former princely state, which have been thoroughly, at least in political and legal sense, integrated into the larger landscape. That's not the case there.
It's also fascinating because Gilgit Baltistan also has a majority Shia population. So there is a sectarian angle to that, and we'll obviously that's a conversation for another time. But before we get into Pakistan occupied Kashmir's conflict, the current unrest, it's very fascinating that you mentioned that ethno linguistically they are not closely linked to the Kashmir Valley, and how majority of the residents in that region or even the diaspora community are Mirpuris, who are from the Mirpur district in the region. And they speak the language which the dialect is closer to Punjabi than it is Kashmiri. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Kashmiri, like you said, only 5%. Also, people only settled across the Neelam region are those who speak in Kashmiri, even in Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Precisely, precisely. That's exactly what it is. Most of it is, you can call it, although some people don't, I prefer to call it a dialect of Punjabi, the Hindko or the Pothavri, but largely it's Pahadi and Gujri. That's largely, if you want to say the ethnolingual composition, that's the composition of the whole region. In the Punch region, the Punch division, it's mostly Pahadi. The Sudhans are the largest tribe there. In Mirpuri, it's similar to the northern areas of the broader Punjab province of Pakistan. In the Muzaffarabad region, it's closer to the Hazara areas of more Hindko speakers there. So, but largely Pahadi and Gojri speakers, that's the composition. A few villages bordering the line of control in the Neelam areas, yes, that's
Mhm.
exactly as you pointed out, but that's a disappearing language there. And the Kashmiri refugees over which the current iteration of the protest is based, most of those refugees aren't settled in the territory itself. They are now settled within the mainland Pakistan.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue for us to also talk about it. And I'm still interested to understand how, when we look at Kashmir as a whole, be it in New Delhi, be it Islamabad, or the international community, if we kind of zoom in and look at the communities that are separated by the line of control, are don't have as many similarities as we would like to believe in terms of culture, social aspects, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the refugee question, like you said, that most of the refugees that migrated to Pakistan after the partition in 1947. They're settled in mainland Kashmir, regions of Punjab and Sindh, and not in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And I want to quickly put this into context that the 38 demands that were put forth by JAAC back in September, October 2025, the grievances right now are kind of an extension of this, because one of the biggest demands of the groups is the abolition of 12 reserved seats in the Legislative Assembly of Pakistan's Kashmir that is allocated to refugees from Indian Kashmir. However, these 12 seats are usually known to be manipulated, allegedly manipulated by the federal government in Islamabad. And the accusation has been that they have used these reserved seats to engineer governments of their choosing. And if I'm not wrong, there was an understanding that the government has agreed to, consider giving up on 6 reserved seats. However, the Supreme Court of Pakistan came with an order and said that this would be a constitutional change and they can't go ahead with it. But let's focus on these 12 reserved seats and what do we know about it. Considering the refugees who are now, well, citizens of Pakistan, they don't really have much of a say in the territory. Do we see a lot of representation from the refugee community in these 12 seats, or how do you see it?
So these 12 seats, which have become the point of contention, had their origins in again Pakistan's original question of when this Kashmir question is settled, the voice of the people who had sort of been expelled or had migrated or taken refuge within Pakistan, they need to have a voice in that question. So they need to have a say in the structure, which whatever structure is created in these territories. So
Mm-hmm.
it has the genesis is there, but obviously decades have passed on since then, and those families have settled within the Pakistani mainland. And by now, I don't think anyone can distinguish between them or any other Punjab or in any other region that they have settled. But they still continue to occupy this position. So it wasn't, I don't think initially, at least, it was meant as an instrument of control in the legislative process of Azad Kashmir. But eventually it did become that. So in addition to these 12 seats, there are a few sort of special seats which can be nominated, or those are like they are said to be also effectively controlled by the army, those nominations. So it's more than in a 40, 48, 46, or 48 member assembly, effectively some 20 or 25 seats are like indirectly controlled by the establishment there,
Mm.
by nominations. 12 of these seats, and there are a few other nominated seats by some teachers and some those types of seats.
Right.
So now you have a legislative assembly through which the executive also flows. You have that controlled by the establishment essentially, and by this segment of population which no longer has a stake within the territory, which doesn't live in the territory, and which has lived and taken citizenship in the mainland. So that is the dysfunction, which is the result of Pakistan not accepting moving on from the question. So
Yeah.
this thing still has to be settled. But according to the people who live there, the agitation is, okay, well, the world has moved on, and our needs haven't been fulfilled as a result of this question, which according to you hasn't been answered. So that has resulted in this sort of administrative political limbo, which leads to poorer services, inadequate representation. So we want a settlement of that question. In order to settle that question within our own territory, let's end these concessions, or let's end these arrangements which sort of institutionalize the limbo. So a first attack on that would be on the 12 refugee seats. So everyone can be empowered within By the way, they are not against taking. They are like, if there are any refugees settled within territory, they are welcome to have a seat to themselves. But not anyone residing within mainland Pakistan,
Okay.
which there aren't many because the opportunities weren't there. They have moved on,
Yeah.
basically, and they aren't against there's, I think, one seat provided to overseas Pakistani, the Mirpuri community probably, and there is not much opposition to that. So
Mm.
anyone who is thought to have a stake within the territory is welcome to have it. It's only this indirect arrangement which is the result of that original limbo, which they sort of detest and want to do away with.
I mean, also what's fascinating is, and I feel the need to put this out, that this is not a separatist movement. This is solely, it's such a localized movement that people are protesting about. Also, the JAC is, it's this fascinating umbrella organization that has representation from such vast spectrum of the society, from traders to students to lawyers. And it's interesting to see how this is a localized movement. And I actually didn't know that people in the region are open to having reserved seats for those who are willing to stay back in the region and have stake in the region. So it's not that they are essentially opposed to any sort of refugees who've come from Jammu and Kashmir in India after partition. Um, just to understand more into this, what impact, I think that's something that is relevant for us in New Delhi and in India. What impact do protests in Pakistan occupied Kashmir have in Jammu and Kashmir? Because there doesn't seem to be a lot of linguistic, ethno-linguistic uh, connection, resonance. We have, of course, seen solidarity protests in Pakistan occupied Kashmir for Jammu and especially the Kashmir Valley. Whatever anti state protests have been staged in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Kashmir Valley. We've seen reflections of it in Pakistan occupied Kashmir in some form. So, if we have to look back and trace how this would impact the valley, what's your take on this?
The biggest, your point regarding this not being a separatist movement should really resolve this question, because what this movement has done is take the a collected set of grievances in the whole territory regarding displacement due to dams, whether it be the Mangla Dam or the Neelam Valley Dam, or
Correct.
pricing or the official perks and all of that, and sort of create an identity built upon these grievances. Now, that identity is a Kashmiri identity, but that Kashmiri identity is neither the separatist identity, which sort of had solidarity with the JKLF types, which had
Mhm.
solidarity with the people across the valley, or that identity is this Muslim conference type pro-Pakistan identity, which used to be the dominant identity, at least among the elite in the early years. It used to be the main party there as well. There was also, interestingly, there was a clash between the cadre of the two, between the JAC and the Muslim Conference recently as well. So
Mhm.
it's not like they are on good terms. So I think, this movement has created an identity which is firmly rooted. This Kashmiri identity of AJK is firmly rooted within the territory. It's rooted within the grievances of the territory, and it wants to renegotiate the terms of sort of the terms with Pakistan, the terms in which it was sort of originally taken. It wants to settle the question for itself, regardless of whether the broader question is settled or not. Interestingly, this was much earlier the case with Gilgit-Baltistan. They wanted nothing to do with the larger question. You can say, as a result of the limbo and whatever has happened as a result of the limbo, this has happened to AJK as well. And
Mhm.
now they want a better terms with Pakistan. What the effect of this on Kashmir, I'm not entirely sure, because again, earlier there used to be solidarity marches. There used to be marches towards the LOC. The last one was
Right.
tried in, I think, 2019 after the abrogation. It wasn't allowed by the Pakistani government. But I don't think this one, while respecting the symbols and sometimes even using the symbols from across the border, isn't that much interested in the larger sort of Kashmiri narrative. It's rooted
Right.
in its own history, in its own memory, and its own sort of oppressors. So it has its own sense of where it's going, and I don't think any impact, any substantial impact, can be found on the other side. Uh, So yes, I think that's pretty much it. These two don't seem to. There's not much connection happening there.
Yeah, also, these are such localized movements that I haven't seen much in Kashmiri discourse. When I speak to people from the region, be it journalists and people who are actively covering, there hasn't been that sense of resonance. And maybe it's easier to find that sense of resonance when you're fighting for the same things. I think this fight is also in the Kashmir Valley, the understanding of local political issues is also, they're not directly impacted by it. So I agree with you. I haven't really heard much, and I just wanted a confirmation about this, about how it would impact uh, the Kashmir Valley specifically. Uh, I want to come back to Islamabad and how historically Pakistan has projected Kashmir as a central issue in its foreign policy, especially in relation to India. I actually found it very funny that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the leader of Pakistan's People's Party, he appealed to Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir to call off the protests. He said that Pakistan is at a critical diplomatic juncture, and Islamabad has played a significant role in facilitating the Iran US understanding, and there's a peace deal that is reported to be signed, and how these domestic unrest risks overshadowing what he describes, as a moment of opportunity for Pakistan. Not like this argument has, of course, found little resonance among many in Pakistan administered Kashmir. And again, another conversation that despite what's happening on foreign policy level, everyday Pakistanis are bearing the brunt of higher tariffs for electricity, fuel prices. But there is, when there's a protest in Pakistan occupied Kashmir to this extent, and we see the government using force, where the JAC was designated as a terror organization. We have seen deaths among protesters. So there is this contradiction between Pakistan's international narrative on Kashmir and the governance realities within Pakistan administered Kashmir. So why then has, what this, for the lack of a better word, what is this hypocrisy in the region? And as a line I love to use often, how Azad is Azad Kashmir, Again, I personally don't think, because the discourse on Kashmir itself has kind of diluted in the international community. So unfortunately, this will not find a lot of space in international narrative when it comes to India Pakistan. But if we just look at Pakistan's hypocrisy, will this impact Pakistan's activism against India's so-called security measures in Kashmir? How does that play out if we have to look at this situation in the international platform?
Yeah, I think you correctly pointed out the hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is officially the statecraft of most of the nations of the world, so it's not
Absolutely.
like they shy away from it. Uh, and yours, the other side commits human rights abuses. My side has to take necessary security measures. This is what always happens. If you can,
Absolutely.
I mean, I can just give you headlines from newspapers of both countries and take out like the source, as you wouldn't know which country as from where the newspaper is originated, and you'll be confused
Yeah.
as to which side the statements, the kind of discourse which happens regarding these sort of peripheral territories, these territories on the peripheries of
Yeah, there are no facts, right? Your truth and my truth. There's it's your narrative, it's my narrative.
precisely, and which narrative basically ends up having power behind it is the one which wins. So that's the reality to it. I don't think this protest, while there's a sense of schadenfreude within many sections of the Indian commentariat regarding the events in AJK, I don't think it will have much impact on how India sort of works around it, works in Kashmir. I mean, that trajectory is completely different. That has a sense of its own. That has the structure which operates within Jammu and Kashmir on this side is very different and differently aimed within the larger political landscape of India. So I think at best for the people within AJK, it's like they renegotiate their idea of what they are within the larger federal framework on better terms and have a distinct sense of themselves as well. Maybe even delinked from the larger question. So yes, I think this movement or the trajectory of both sides of the LOC from the past many years can give us an idea that yeah, this question is not going to find much resonance, at least for now. Because I mean, come on, the world is not short of issues right now. It's
Absolutely.
like firestorm everywhere. So there's a sense of fatigue regarding this crisis, and this is not the most pressing of crises, at least in the eyes of the global community. Or
Grander scheme of things. Yeah.
so, yeah, I think they will go their own ways, and I don't think any of these sides, and by that I mean the Indian and the Pakistani establishments, have an eye on the other side. It's just
Right.
there's too much going on at home. They'll just have at best there will be this nasty little glee occasionally at what's happening to on the other side, and that's about it. It's just, but yeah, I just genuinely hope the best regarding the people there that they get a better deal and the killing stop. That's about it regarding this.
Inshallah, on that note. I think this was useful, even though Pakistan is currently enjoying its glorious diplomatic moment. It's still important for us to keep a tab on these issues and see how they unfold in the coming period. But thank you so much, Moin, for sitting down with me and talking about Kashmir all over again. It was lovely to have you here on All Things Policy, and thanks for
I would
all.
just like to get a final word in. I was
Yeah,
never going to be updated on all these issues regarding Pakistan if it was not for your Substack. So to anyone listening to this, please subscribe to our Substack, Pakistan Paigam. It's the best source, the best aggregator, and the best analysis of that country and everything within it you can ever find. So please go subscribe to it.
thank you. That's very, very kind of you, and I truly appreciate that plug-in. And of course, while India, Pakistan is here, we'll keep having more conversations, Moin.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.